guys. This is Kim, and I have my trusty wingman.
It's Melvin.
Yes, and you are tuned into the SoulSense podcast, aka Quiet Storm, aka You Know What It Do, aka Yeah. Okay, so anyways, I just wanted to be a little silly there. So anywho, we're back at it again, and Melvin, what's going on?
Not a lot. I guess maybe a lot. When's the last time we? So we've taken we missed a week. Last week week before last, I remember we asked people to pray for our daughter. Well, what did we talk about that?
Yeah, the last time we were on, we asked, as we were signing out, we were asking people to pray for our daughter, our oldest, because of her headaches.
Oh yeah, and I can't remember if we talked about this yet, but if not, so a couple days later, we ended up having to go to the ER, and she had came. Well, first of all, she had come home, and the babysitter, the daycare, had said that she was having, wasn't being herself, wasn't eating a lot, which she typically doesn't, but also she was not playing, and not complaining about not getting her way or whatever else. She was just very stoic, and that is not our daughter. She is like a ball of energy.
Yes.
And the bad part of that is you got to redirect her a lot, but the good part of that is she's just hilarious, and she's very loving and very personable. But anyway, she was none of those things, and that's the thing that kind of, I guess, triggered you, right?
Yeah, and then also her teacher has said that she thought that she was noticing some speech involvement, and I had been praying over my baby. I had been giving her Tylenol, and and it just kept lingering. And the thing about our oldest is that she has a high pain tolerance. She's like me. So like she can deal with a lot of stuff and be sick. She really could be sick, but she can just like plummet through it, And so when she starts not acting herself, like not eating her favorite foods, not, doing the things that cause like I know something that kind of alarmed me. I had went and got y'all some cupcakes at Gigi's Cupcakes, and I brought them in, and I'm like so excited for them to be, to see the cupcakes. And she's like, "Okay, mommy, I'll just eat it later." And now this little girl is 5. Like, what little 5-year-older does not want a cupcake? And it was like her favorite type of cupcake, sprinkles, all that stuff. So anyway, so I knew something was going on there. But when that happened, I was like, nobody likes to go to the ER, but at least if something were to happen, everything is in one site. So we headed to the ER and proceeded to be there until 5 a.m. that next morning.
And now the good thing, we will give a shout out, because Children's Hospital ER is way different than
An adult
grown-up hospital
yes,
ER.
It is.
They were very quick, very efficient, got us back there, and figured out, ran some preliminary tests on her, and ultimately just decided to give her a CAT scan. All these things are moving really quickly, right?
Yeah.
And Kimberly is like, "Hey, we're going to go back here and do the CAT scan. Pretty much like, you just wait here." And first off, sidebar, I was a tad bit insulted at this whole thing so far, because nobody's talking to me. Like, I'm up there and no one is directing any questions, anything towards me. And I'm like, and I'm trying not to say nothing, but inside I'm like, man, wait a minute, I am her daddy. Like, why?
But you
not
gotta
talking
understand though, that is just a natural thing. Like, I worked in a children's hospital, and typically, unless you're like the typical American culture, the mother just tends to speak for the children, and then you have other cultures that when you're addressing the family, like you speak to the man, but that's not the American culture. And typically in our country, the mother does know more. She's more, because she's the nurturer. Plus, on top of that, I'm a nurse practitioner, so I'm talking to
but
them.
they didn't know that.
But see, I'm talking to them in the lingo. I'm already spitting out history and stuff like that. Like, I'm not your typical person coming in. I'm trying to get to the point so y'all can figure out what's going on with my baby. But I guess I understand why you was taking offense. I'm like, this is what people do. It ain't got nothing to do with you.
I'm asking questions, and they looking at me.
No, they
like,
wasn't.
Man, get out of here. I know what I saw.
Ooh.
But anyway, nobody is talking to me. And back to the story. So Kimberly goes away, and they're gone about 15 minutes, maybe less. And next thing I know, they come back in, and they got the poo-poo face. My baby got the poo-poo face. And I'm like, man, what's up? And Kimberly is like, man, she did not do anything. Like, she wasn't even trying to let them touch her and blah, blah, blah.
She freaked out, y'all. We was all good walking down that hallway. We walked into that room where they had the CT scan, and that girl was like, literally, she was like, no, not today. And I was like, wait a minute. And I didn't think it was going to be an issue because she's had an x-ray before, because a couple of years back, she had a little bout of bronchitis, and she even had pneumonia. Like, it ended up developing into pneumonia, and so she's had an x-ray. So I'm like, you done did that, and you was much younger. You know what I'm saying? We vaccinate our children, so it's like you done got poked, and so I'm like, oh, they just gonna slide her in and slide her out. She said, oh no, not today. Not today. And so they basically were like, okay, we're probably going to have to sedate her. And of course, we don't want that to happen because who wants to sedate their little baby? You don't know how they're going to deal with that. So we kind of talk to her and pump her up and stuff like that, because meanwhile, we know we can't get around this test. Like, they've done everything else. And the only way that they're going to clear us or keep us is determined by these results of this test. Because from what just to give y'all just a little knowledge, in my head, I wanted things to be ruled out. When a child starts complaining of headaches, for that matter, anyone, dizziness, anything like that, the first thing, worst case scenario, I'm thinking is a tumor. And then I'm also thinking about meningitis, but she really didn't have a fever. So I was like, probably not that. And, she still is acting herself with meningitis. She kind of taken out a little bit. So worst case scenario, I'm thinking, okay, I want them to make sure nothing's going on in her brain, and that's what a CT scan will do. So we're trying to talk her into it because we know we can't get around it. Then the second time goes around, because they just like, we just about to sedate and we like, give her one more chance. So then Melvin goes down there, and we both go down there together.
But let me keep it real. So they come back in, and I'm, like I said, I got a little bit of an internal attitude. Kimberly knows, but don't nobody else. No, I ain't talking to nobody else. But I'm like, man, they're tripping. And they come back, and I'm like, see, man, I know I should have went down there. And I think I even said this.
Yeah,
like,
you did.
I know I should have went down there, because I'm like, I know how to talk to my baby. I get her to do it, she'll
like
be
I
straight.
don't know how to talk to him.
But I do be giving her them pep talks. But anyway, we go down there, and man, when I tell you, I've never even seen her like this before. I don't know if y'all have ever seen like those YouTube videos or seen a thing where you put somebody try to put a cat in a bathtub or something like that. And the reaction that a cat has, it's like lightning. It's almost like the cat walk on water and jump up out of there so fast. Mm-hmm. That is how this girl is acting with the CT scan thing. And it's not like the old school one where it's like this long tube. It's just this little donut looking thing. And you don't even, but I don't know. And my baby is brave typically. Like she gone, I could tell her to backflip in the pool and she'll do it. You know what I'm saying? She don't have no type of fears like that. And we go in there and now I start bribing her on the way down. And I'm like, look, if you go in here, I'm going to get you a Wii game. And we don't do the bribery game.
No, we
but
don't.
It's about 11 o'clock. And I'm like, man, I'm trying to go home.
Yeah, it's
I'm going to break all my parenting rules.
We trying to go to work the next day.
I'm like, I walk out to the car. I go get Lammy. And we ready to, that's her little
stuffed animal.
Yeah, used to be stuffed. But we go in there, man, and she's like, they putting these little smock things,
the lead
on us.
vest on us because of the magnetic.
And she's like, well, no, I want to wait for my mommy to get her vest on. And like, I'm starting to think, like, is she stalling?
Yeah.
Like, is she stalling right now? And she's like, no, well, and then Kimberly get her thing on. Wait a minute, I just want to wait. Wait a minute, wait. And like, I'm like, okay, let's just see. And I go to pick her up and put her on the table, and she goes full out like panic mode and like, no, not wanting to get put on that table, man. To the point where she is running away, like in the middle of this room, running around the room, and I'm just looking at the little tech, and he like, okay, we're gonna have to try it again. I'm like, so we go back, and what about?
Like they go, like the tech calls the doctor. They already had the order sitting in for it, but they were just trying to grace us, and so when she gets back, the nurse gives her intranasal Versed. So basically they squirt this like conscious sedation medicine up her nose, and I could tell when they did that, like something about it didn't give me a good feeling, because I guess the way that she had to do it, because she had to sniff it up and then swallow it, and it tasted bad. And so literally maybe like 5 minutes later, she was like high as a kite. Like she's still able to walk and everything like that, but she is like super uber goofy, acting, asking the same questions, laughing. Just she high as a kite. And so we're walking down there. We get in there, and I think Melvin was able to get her up on the table, which was a progress, because she wasn't getting nowhere near the machine.
She sat on the table.
Yeah, she
was
sat
not
on the
laying
table.
down.
She would not put her head on that little head thing. I even got up on the table for them to just like show her how far I was going to go in and how far I was going to come out and stuff. They didn't turn the machine on, but like, it's a children's hospital, so everything about it is supposed to be like conducive for kids. So they got stickers on these things. They got like paintings on the ceiling. I mean, she wasn't having it. High as a kite, but wasn't too high to realize that she wasn't going in that machine. So at that point, they was like, look, we tired of messing around with y'all. We about to knock her out. And I was just like, and by this time, actually, when we got back to the room, we just were sitting in there waiting. And Melvin was like, we have a good friend of ours. Hi, Brandy. She was taking care, watching our baby. And so Melvin was like, it was nearing like midnight at this point. And, he was like, we got to go and relieve her, because we had been there since like 6 something, So when he catches a Uber home, leaves the car there for me and Fair once we get done. And he calls back. No, I call him because I'm trying to update him, like, because they bringing in like, what's those forms? Consent forms and everything. And they're going over the side effects, and I get all nervous. And I'm like, is this really what I'm about to do to my baby? And so I call him, and I'm frustrated. I'm going to be honest. I had an attitude because both of us at this point was exhausted, and I was frustrated because Farrah was tripping. Okay. We could have been out of there at like 9 o'clock, But she was tripping, and here we are at midnight, and Melvin talking about he got to relieve our babysitter, and I was like, he just trying to leave. And then at that moment, I was like, no, I can't even get mad because I am the nurse. So like, what I look like being the one going home and going to sleep, and I'm the one that got the medical knowledge. I'm like, man, this is just life is unfair.
And she talked about you want to do rock, paper,
I
scissors.
sure was, y'all.
For who gonna go?
I sure was.
I was like,
Let me tell
man,
you,
come
the
on.
parenting struggle is real. See, you love your kids so much, but there's always that reminder about how selfish you can be. So, anyways, so we go ahead, we sign the consent form. I sign it because he's at home. They have to give her an IV, y'all, because they're putting her under, like they're gonna knock her out. They have to put on a heart monitor to make sure that she does not have any type of respiratory depression, meaning that she stops breathing. They also put on oxygen, a nasal cannula that goes into your nostrils. So just in case her breathing slows, that she's taking in enough oxygen. I mean, it was a whole ordeal. But wait, the biggest ordeal was when they put in that IV. Y'all, I was like, why my kid got to be that kid? And as a nurse, and any nurses out there, you know, if you've ever taken care of children or just difficult patients, you dread those patients that just put up a fight. And our baby put up a fight. There literally was like 4 people holding her down, me being one of them. I had to fight back tears because I was like, I don't want this child to think that I'm like abusing her, but I knew like the end result, we had to get this CT scan. Like her tears were gonna have to wait because I'd rather deal with these tears to know that she ain't had no brain tumor. But anyways, so that thing right there, y'all, that was the worst part. This situation was so serious that the nurse could not push the medicine herself. The actual attending doctor had to come. Y'all, in a CT room, there was like 7 folks up in this room. Like the respiratory therapist was up in there, the nurse that was monitoring her. It was so many people up in there. And my baby still took a while to get knocked out. They telling me that it's going to take just a couple of minutes. This child was trying to walk up off this bed, y'all. Like, I mean, it was a whole ordeal. And then all of a sudden, she just passed out. Like, just went to sleep. She had her little lammy up under her, and she just went to sleep. And they told me that it was probably going to take about 20 to 30 minutes for it to wear off and get out of her system. You want to know how long it took? 2 minutes. Once we got back to that room, they had to go and get her blood pressure cuff because she had to get a blood pressure cuff. And this girl gets the stirring and sits right on up like, Mommy, where's Lammy? I said, y'all done. Okay. And proceeded to stay wide awake. And the results, because it was so late, I can only assume that they had to wake up the radiologist because it was like 2:00 when we went down there. We didn't get our results back till 4:00. And then we finally was walking out at 5:00. She is okay. And they chalked it up to basically my own conclusion is that she has issues with her vision. And y'all, it was a whole ordeal. So that was that 1 week. That was like maybe a couple of days after we had talked with you guys last. And then, and let me tell you how much of a girl, your girl is a beast. Your girl was a beast because I stayed up to 5:00 in the morning, got back home. I went to sleep about 3 hours or so and got right on up, saw my patients, y'all, came home. I was knocked out for the rest of the night, but I was a beast.
Your hubby held you down, though, didn't
he did. He got the kids ready, got them off. I mean, your girl was struggling. I was straight struggling. But that's growth because Melvin will tell you, left to my own devices, that would have been easily a reason to call out. But you know what? I told you I had a repentant heart, didn't I? I told you last time I was repentant, and I did. And I got up and I saw every last one of my patients that was on my roster, And I did what I had to do, put my big girl panties on. And so then that next week, Melvin's parents flew in. Our baby turned 1, so we now have a 1 year older. Oh, I'm so sentimental in the sap. But his parents wanted to be here for her actual birthday, and we were able to spend probably they were here probably about a week, almost about
Yeah.
5 days, about 5 days. And so that's what we've been really up to and while we've been away. And I eventually, guys, we are gonna get consistent again. We are. But you know what, like I've been telling Melvin, in the words of the wise man Lil Duval, we living our best life. Okay? We just living our best life. We ain't got time to go back and forth with y'all. No, I'm just playing. But no, seriously, no. Like, yeah, it's the summertime. You know, we're trying to soak up as much time with our family. Actually, my parents and my sister and niece, they're coming in town in a couple of days. So, you know, we just trying, we told y'all, we trying to lean into our family, and that takes time, you know, and that takes commitment. And so, you know, we're going to get back to being routine one of these days, one of these weeks.
Yeah. um. So we did have just some things to share with you guys. We had a cool thing on Sunday. I think we had mentioned before. We've been learning a lot about just David in the life of David, and there's been a lot of different lessons over it. And a lot of them, actually, each one of them have kind of sent me away thinking, and really kind of exposed pieces of my heart for sure. And this week we looked at David and Jonathan and their relationship, and you know, just for those of you who don't know, Jonathan was, well, let's just read a little bit about.
Well, it's a pretty lengthy passage, that initial one. So I don't know if you want to read all of that, but Jonathan was Saul's son. Saul was the king, the first king of Israel, and his son was Jonathan. And the relationship with Jonathan and David was that, and it actually says it in the scripture, you probably can read that part, that the moment that they met each other, like the moment that Jonathan met him, they were like linked together. Like they were like the best of friends and very loyal to each other. Um,
Yeah, it says in 1 Samuel 17:57. Actually, it's probably 18:1. I think it gets into that part. Let's see. 18:1. It says, and this is they're talking about David and Jonathan's friendship. It says, as soon as he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. And Saul took him that day and would not let him return to his father's house. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was on him, and he gave it to David, and his armor, and even his sword, his bow, and his belt. And David went out and was successful wherever Saul sent him, so that Saul set him over the men of war. And this was good in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants. So Jonathan is Saul's son, and Saul definitely, throughout the scriptures, has a pretty contentious relationship with David. He's, jealous a lot of times of what David is doing. And, even with that, it was kind of peculiar that Jonathan just has such a tight relationship with David. To me, there was so many different reasons why Jonathan could be jealous of David. Jonathan, it could almost be like David is is the favored person, while Jonathan's, I don't know how that works, but he's the son of the king. You would think he would be in line to be the next king. So there, in he knows what the prophecies are, and so he has this. There's so many, and I suggest you really read through it. We're not going to go all the way into uh, Samuel, but I suggest you really just take some time and read First Samuel, and what is it, 17 and 18 really digs into their relationship.
Yeah, but start with chapter 14. First Samuel 14 verses 1 through 23, and then go down to First Samuel 17 verses 57 all the way through chapter 18 verses 4. So yeah, that one of the points you just made was about the uniqueness of their relationship. And that was something that was brought out on the sermon on Sunday, was that for all practical purposes, they really should not have been the best of friends, because for one, to know the story of David and Saul, that like Saul was very envious of him, actively tried to kill David. And you would just think by just family loyalty that Jonathan would just fall on the bandwagon. Also envious, Jonathan could be envious of David because, he was the prince. If his dad is the king, he's the prince. So who would be next in line? You know what I'm saying? It would be me. That's what you would think Jonathan would think. Mark, our evangelist, pointed out a good point. If you read, I think that's back in chapter 14, but earlier, before David slayed Goliath, Jonathan had killed, what is it, hundreds or thousands of Philistines just with him and his armor bearer. But then when Goliath comes later, everyone runs and scurries away from him. So like, even with that contrast, like, okay, you are revered in one situation, but later on down the road, David kills Goliath and now he's being pushed up and exalted. Human nature, you would think there would be a little envy there and little jealousy. But instead, the uniqueness of their relationship is like, after David spoke with Saul, it said their souls were knit together. And it's like, to me, that's, like I have mentioned to y'all in previous episodes, you can never push aside the wordings of things, like to say that somebody's soul is knit to your soul, like that's powerful. Like that ain't no light little friendship. That ain't no shallow relationship. That's not no fair weather friend. Like, y'all are connected to each other. And I thought that was a really good point that was brought out, that like that really signifies how deep their relation was and the foundation of what it was.
Yeah. And again, we just kind of want to set I'll actually probably link this sermon into the notes of the show, but it's definitely worth taking a good listen to. But the really points that he drove home, first off, he talked about, the language that they used, it meant like his soul was chained, his soul was chained to the soul of David. So I don't know, it just kind of painted this illustration for me of like, I can't get away if I wanted to, you know what I mean? I'm so linked to this person, and I'm so, in sync with this person that even if I wanted to, I couldn't get away because we are chained together. You know what I mean? I couldn't break this bond if I wanted to. And he asked, who are you chained to? And I really, and he made uh, the, I guess the declaration, like, besides your spouse, who are you chained to? And that kind of really,
Mark gave that. He asked that question to the
oh yeah,
to
yeah,
the like that wasn't asked in the Bible. That was our evangelist posed that question to us, the audience.
yeah, who are you chained to? And that really kind of struck me because, um, you know, I remember a time, Kim, that like when I first became a Christian, like I sought out, relationships and friendships, and there were people who like I couldn't even, like, I couldn't wait to speak to them.
Mm.
I couldn't wait to tell them about the things that were going on in my life, good or bad. Like I remember anticipating, like I remember guys like Ryan Birchfield and Russell Scales, my boy Anwar, Tim Kadri. Like these are all names, man, that like I just remember just so much joy of just being around them, and like almost like they sustained me, you know what I mean? And even later on in my adult life, just really having times where just like I just really valued guys like John Jackson and Gerard, and I've talked to you before about just these different guys, man, who I really understood the importance that they played in my life, but now I cannot really say that I have this type of relationship with anybody, like where it's, I think I have these type of relationships available for sure, but I don't think that I have like this type of consistent relationship with anybody. And it really just kind of struck me like I'm a bad friend, you know what I mean? Like I'm a bad friend because there are a lot of people who reach out to me, Tim Hutchins, this guy, and I'm just saying random names to y'all, but anyway, this is just me being open. Like this dude, this guy, he calls me all the time, checks up on me, and like, I have the most spiritual conversations with this guy. And, it's not those one-sided ones where, I'm talking to him and I'm doing most of the giving advice or whatever. Like this guy has had different things going on in his life, but we sat down and like, he's asking about me. How are you doing? What have you got going on? And I was like, man, this guy is amazing. But, our friendship has not grown like it could have. And it's really because of me. And, I start, those things start rushing through my head, just being open. Like it start rushing through my head like, man, you really suck, man. Because there are people who would kill to have just one, just one. And God is just blessing me with different opportunities and different, just places to have deep relationships. And I really don't know what it is about me that I mean, I like people. It's not like I don't like them, but I like people, but I can just be, it could be so hard for me to invest. And I think it's just hard for me to invest.
When he was talking, I was thinking like, I think my problem is because for me, I'm not a surfacey person, so I don't mind having relationships. Like I actually look to have relationships with people. I can seek it out, and I think the problem that I have is that I have the beginnings of so many great relationships, but I think that I can overwhelm myself. Like right now, I can name so many people who I've identified as people who will help me grow, that I genuinely love being around them, and not because they are just yes people. It's because like they actually, like, one of the things that one of the points from the sermon was um let's see providing, let's see, their friendship is vision driven. Their friendship was spiritually centered. He was referring to the relationship with Jonathan and David. And I actually know many people, like a good handful of people, who I'm like, you know what? Me and them could be great friends. It could really be an iron sharpening iron type of relationship. But it's like I'm starting to realize that you really can't have that with a whole lot of people at one time. I'll say at one time, because depending on where you're at in your life, you can move, and things can happen, go from one group or whatever, and you can have different people at different times of your life. But I think for me, like, I can think of a lot of people that I could have that relationship, and it's actually the beginning of that, kind of like what you said, Melvin. But for me, it's not so much of the issue of investing, and not like wanting to invest in it. It's more so I've started too much. I've bitten off too much than I could chew, you know? And so now I can't get with none of y'all because
Right.
me because meanwhile, I've also feel like the spirit has told me that we need to pay attention to our family. There's two things that I feel like the spirit has told me here recently. Y'all need to pay attention to your family, and then you are planted now in a specific church group. We have mentoring groups, and I strongly feel like we need to really invest in getting to know the people in our mentoring group. We've had a couple of changes, people in and out, because of moving and different life scenarios. And so now we've gotten to a place where we've been in a group for a little bit and there's no shuffling up. So now it's time for you to build with people in your group. And so it's kind of like, I want to do that, but then I got these other people too that I want to build with too. And so that's where I kind of line up on it, like, I am an open book. I'll tell anybody anything about me. I am unashamed. But that's where I fall on the little line right there for me.
Yeah. So for both of us, I think it's just I think when you're dealing with relationships, if you're not careful, you could find yourself just kind of lost in the sauce. And I've seen, and I have been for myself, and I've also seen a couple of different, I guess, examples of people, when it comes to relationships. And before that, let's look at, these are first off, here goes some. He gave us some examples of what makes a healthy relationship, of like how to have that type of relationship with Jonathan and David. First he talked about their relationship was spiritually centered. And I'll just go through these quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said their relationship, their friendship, in their friendship, each one considered the other one greater than themselves. And he gave that example in 1 Samuel 18:6, where Jonathan loved him as his own soul. And also they gave examples of with David, like just how they viewed themselves, like really humbly. And that's the one I really wanted to kind of look at. I see that gets played out in situations where people are, where you can be like, I don't have any deep friendships. In the first place you look for, the first culprit you look at is external. You know what I mean? Like nobody is investing in me. Nobody is, I can't get deep relationships with anybody. Everybody's shallow. Everybody this, everybody that. No one wants to meet my needs. I'm meeting other people's needs, or the church this, or the church that, or my group of friends, even if it's outside. We can have that attitude. I've had that attitude before, where it's a very critical attitude, where where I'm at in terms of relationships, I'm blaming it on everyone else. When, you know, one of the most critical components to a godly relationship, which that's the first thing, is you've got to have friendships and relationships built on spiritual things. Otherwise, they're going to be built on something very impermanent. You know what I mean? And it's going to be, it's just like a marriage. Your marriage has to be centered on spiritual things. But, you know, the key, the most crucial component to a spiritual relationship is, like that scripture said, each person considering the other person greater than themselves. You have to be, it should almost be a competition. We were in a marriage, that marriage training class, and he was saying, like, you should be on a mission to outserve one another. I mean, it's the same thing. You should be on a mission to, you know, like, always checking yourself to make sure that you are considering your those others greater than yourself. And when you're doing that, whenever you find yourself blaming other people, like if you don't have deep relationships and you're blaming other people, there goes the number one sign that is your fault, because you're looking at other people's investment to make these friendships work. You know what I mean? And that comes out. You know, that just means you're a selfish friend when you're just out here looking for other people and what they have to add in. Now, I'm not saying, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's kind of like what the Bible says in Matthew. You know, before you talk about the speck in somebody's, before you talk about the speck, take the plank out of your eye. And you know, to be on a more practical level, like I think we can all get that victim mentality, like you said, you know. But one of the things that I always try to remember myself when I get to that point where I want to complain is being that person that was on that receiving end of being told that I wasn't a good friend or something like that. You know, I was having a conversation with a person, and she was telling me about, you know, different things about, you know, the characteristics that thought she saw in me. And hey, I can't say that she didn't see those things. But something that I could not shake the thought of, you know, as I'm listening to her, is like, the very things that you are saying that you need in a friendship, you're not even giving them. You know what I'm saying? And that's one of the things that I think we have to be very self-reflective on. And when I look at that point, that's what I think of. One of the things I think of when you're talking about considering others better than yourself is like, okay, first off, like, who am I to feel like I should get, you know, a treatment that I'm not even willing to give myself, you know? And that's just something that I've tried to train myself, and I still train myself. I'm still trying to remind myself to do. When I get to that point where I'm starting to be critical, like, I'm asking myself, are you doing that? You know what I'm saying? Like, you're asking people to be in your life and to not be shallow. Have you been showing people that you're shallow? You know, and then that gives you better perspective, because then you could be like, well, no, I don't think that I'm being shallow, but for this person, I can see how they can, you know, view me as X, Y, and Z. And so I always think about that when I had that conversation with this particular woman, and she was just talking, not just about, you know, just how she felt her relationship with me was, just in general. She was just talking about how it was just hard for her to get deep with certain people. And I remember asking her, like, well, are you reaching out to people? Like, you know, because people got their thing too. Like, the insecurities you have, people got their insecurities too. So you just ain't nobody gonna talk to nobody. Somebody got to initiate, you know? So anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. When you say that, you know, it is one thing that we can do a lot of times is and it goes back to that considering others greater than yourself, and you kind of alluded to it, is, you know, we could be very critical on what other people are not bringing to the table. I mean, even in in my marriage, we had a conversation this morning where, I was talking to Kimberly about some stuff, and it, I just wasn't very happy with the way that she was receiving, like the way that she was coming at me. And I was feeling like, man, you're jumping to, being very judgmental. Like I thought this was a safe space. You know what I mean? I thought we were just here to keep it real. You know what I mean? And I just want to have a conversation. And I think I was valid in my point, but it was making me very frustrated. And I was like, I don't do that to you. And she was like, well, I mean, you do, because we just had this same conversation, a similar conversation, and this was how it came out. And I just kind of thought about it. I was like, man, and not to say whether my point was right or wrong or her point was right or wrong, but what is true about it is, if I look at, like, it's difficult knowing how to relate, how to be whatever it is for that person. And you're spending your whole life, especially for your significant other, you're really just trying to figure out how to be for this person in all situations. And that's very difficult. And the way that I was coming at her was almost like, man, this is an easy thing to do. You know what I mean? You know what I need. I need you to be that. And I think we could do that. I know if I do that at home, I could do that a lot of places, and to be honest, maybe I don't, because I don't necessarily, I'm not affected as much by the outside world as I am by my wife. But definitely, man, just dealing with other people and my expectations for how I want them to deal with me is really, can sometimes be off of what I bring to the table. Like I want grace when I mess up, you know what I mean? If I say something the wrong way, or if I'm a little too pushy, or if I'm aloof, I want grace. Man, you understand what I am. I offer other good things. So you should understand that. That's just what comes with it. Like, give me some grace. But if it's on the other foot, I can be, really demanding. And sometimes it's not vocally, that person may not even know, but I just check out. I just dip out and be like, I'm not even going to deal with this person on that level anymore. And it's not even something that I do intentionally, but it's just my nature. And it goes back to what you were saying. Like, I'm not considering other people greater than myself. Now, what I will say is, the first thing that can come to mind is, like, if we're going into these type of relationships like this, how do you protect yourself from being because there are toxic relationships, and you can't be in a relationship where you're the only person giving.
Yeah.
How do you protect yourself from that?
Oh, well, I'm still learning. But Melvin, I tell you, I am a huge advocate for boundaries, and I put in these boundaries not so much to protect myself, but to protect other people too, because I don't want to hurt people's feelings just as much as I don't want my own feelings hurt. So I put up like these kind of like mental safeguards no matter who you are, this is what it's going to be across the board. You know what I'm saying? So there won't be any guilt that I will carry. There won't be any like caving into something that I really don't want to do. This is my standard. And if it's not good, now, of course, there may be some times where so let me give you just an example. I have come to a point in my life where I don't answer the phone for pretty much anybody at certain times during the day. The only person that I answer the phone for, whenever this call comes in, I answer it if I hear it and I'm available, and that's my husband. Um, and the reason why I do that, it's not to be rude and not to whatever. And it's not that I don't go around and answering people's phone calls, but I know that there are certain times throughout the day, like we all have, where we're tired, we're irritable. And I know that in those times, or like, let's say like somebody calls you, but you only literally have like a couple of minutes because you may be running to go pick up your kids, or you may be getting ready to meet up with somebody or go back in from a lunch break, and you literally have like a couple of minutes. Like, I would feel guilty about not picking up the phone and talking to somebody, but then I'd be on the phone talking to people for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and and I literally only had 2 minutes, you know what I'm saying? And that's just something minor, but I just started to think about that. Like, you have to start controlling your time and your life. We can't control everybody else, but we have to control ourselves, or try to, within the Lord. So what I do is, in those moments when I'm irritable, or I'm exhausted, or I'm eating, or whatever, there's just like those moments where I need to not be on the phone. Like, I'm trying to be with my husband, I'm trying to be with my kids, or whatever. I don't answer people's phone calls. Now, text messages, I like text messages because you can always get back to people when you get back to it. But with phone calls, I have learned that people with the best intentions, they still will take all your time. You know what I'm saying? Nobody will monitor your time for you other than yourself. And me and Melvin actually we had to agree to disagree about this, because we have a family friend who called me at a time when I was trying to rest and I was trying to take a nap. And he was like, you need to call her. You need to call her back, because she was in town and stuff and wanting to come and spend some time with our family. And I was like, okay, I literally am going to give myself 45 minutes, because right now, knowing who this person is and the conversations that I've had in the past, I need to be mentally prepared to talk to her, because what I don't want to do is snap on my friend. What I don't want to do is be short with my friend, because I love this person. And if I know that I cannot give that to her right now, let me get to a place where I am genuinely trying to get to that place where I will be at a place to be the best friend that I can be to her. So it's not about protecting myself in that moment. It was about protecting her, because I know how I get when I'm irritable. And I was irritable at that time. I needed to take me a nap.
Yeah, and I still don't necessarily agree with her in that, but at the end of the day,
you have that right to not agree.
Right. And here goes the thing, I think having boundaries, I think having all those things are good, but all of them can be dangerous without the most important thing, and that's building your relationships, like we said before, on godly things. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because I did not agree with Kimberly in that, and I still don't. But what I do know is that this wasn't something that she just came up with for herself. You know what I'm saying? This is something that came out of prayer and out of
studying it out, studying boundaries
right,
out.
And so it's built on godly principles. And so even if, as the husband, and I'm sure that as her husband, if I would have been like, Kimberly, I really want you to do this. And, we could have gone down that path. But at the end of the day, I didn't have to necessarily agree with her. But the thing I do agree with is that if you took it to God and you're letting you're letting the Bible and the Spirit be your filter. And so how do we protect ourselves from being taken advantage of is that our relationships, the ones that we're really investing in. Now, I'm not talking about mentoring people and helping people out, being evangelistic, but I'm talking about your friends. Your best friends have to be centered on spiritual things, because then you guys are both invested. It's you guys are equally yoked, and you're working from the same foundation. And so that it doesn't matter whether I'm in a good mood or a bad mood, or you come wrong at me or I come wrong at you. We those things change. You know what I mean? So let's say with Kimberly, she is not in the best of moods and she doesn't answer the phone, and maybe she doesn't call back at all that day, right? You know, if you don't have a godly relationship, sometimes that could be, man, that could be bad news. But if you have a godly relationship, even if that person needs to say, hey, you know, I would have really appreciated you giving me a call, it's not going to be this crazy emotional headache type of thing, because you're all working from the same place, and you can let that person and their concern is more with you. You know what I'm saying? They're not coming from a place where I deserve a call and I this and I that. That's a freaking headache, man. But you know, you're working from something that is not, that doesn't waver like we waver. You're working from a solid foundation. Some things that I saw that are like components of a godly relationship. So I'm going to throw a couple of these out. John 15:13 says, greater love has no one than this, than to lay his life, to lay one's life down for his friends. In Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24 through 25, it says, and let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. There's tons. If you just look up scriptures on godly relationships, you know, there's tons of just different scriptures that really can describe what these relationships should look like. And Mark, back to him, you know, his whole point was, this is what we have to strive for. You know, this is what our relationships have to be. And even if you are not, you know, the mission of this podcast really is like, why are these are practical things, right? Mm-hmm. Like a friendship period, you should start out by being equally yoked. You guys should have a unified goal and the same type of moral compass. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Now, of course, for me, I'm going to say it's got to be spiritually centered, because any other thing, let's say the thing you guys are linked up on is you're both really career focused. You guys are both career focused, and you guys relate on that because you're both driven. I think that's good, right? But yeah, I think that's not permanent, because when my job search isn't going good or my thing isn't going well, then I'm not going to be the best friend to be around. I'm not going to want to hear about your great news about what you got going on, because the thing that relates us is very selfish and very self-centered. Now, that doesn't mean, like, for me, my relationships, the foundation has to be spirituality, right? We got to be equally yoked on that. And they've got to be centered around God. Mm-hmm. Now, on top of that, there are layers. After that, I do surround myself. My best friends are going to be people who also have the same, who are driven, who have the same drive as me, because otherwise we're not going to be able to check each other. You know what I mean? We're not going to be able to challenge. Like, one of my closest friends is a guy named Adam Nagel. We have, on paper, we have nothing in common, as far as, like, we are from two opposite ends of the spectrum as far as if you were just looking at us. But I have the best conversations with this guy because we just have the same type of focus. But he's younger than me, and he's probably like 10 times more focused. He's like a Doogie Howser genius kid. But, you know, I love being around him, man. I love talking to him because not only spiritually, but on those other layers, he really helps me. He challenges me, and he makes me challenge myself. Like, man, he's one of those guys that are super smart, super accomplished, but he's never just resting. You know what I'm saying? He's always trying to grow, and we have helped each other back and forth on those type of things. And so, you know, yes, it's got to start spiritually, but I think, you know, from there, you know, if you're in the kingdom, you're in a church, and you gotta, supposedly all of you guys are you have that ground to work from.
Yeah.
But then after that, you got to start looking at the other pieces. That makes
Yeah, and something that made me, this is one of my reflective things that I just kind of was thinking, because you hear stuff and you just start thinking and you start internalizing and like, wow, okay, so how are my relationships? And I think it can wane for us. You know what I'm saying? Like, it takes work to keep your relationships like grounded in the right things. You know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes it's just easier to talk about the football game that's coming up or football season coming up. Sometimes it's just easier to just like, especially with those who have kids, it's so easy to just use your kids as a cop out. Like, you don't want to be pressing into deep stuff all the time, but so and even with people who are considered to be those friendships that are like spiritually centered. And so one of the things I was thinking about when he was talking, I was just like, what does that look like, for me, and am I doing that consistently? Like, what does spiritually centered look like for Kimberly? Because it may not look that same for someone else. Now, let's don't use that as a cop out, but like, we're all made differently. So for me, what I have identified and what I need to do, and really strive to do for myself is that I'm a type of person that if this is going to be my lifestyle and it's going to be infused into what I do, then I need to talk about it as freely as I talk about anything else. So like when I'm just out randomly talking to somebody, if a scripture just happens to be appropriate at the time, it's going to be appropriate. You know what I'm saying? If somebody asks me about, I don't know, how long you've been married, almost 10 years, and it's been by the grace of God, we still together and going strong. You know what I'm saying? Like God is infused in my life because he is my life. Just like with anything else, we so freely talk about our careers. We so freely talk about our children. How come we don't freely talk about God? And so that's been something that I challenge myself with. But then I also, when on Sunday, I was just thinking, like, have you been consistent with that, Kim? And I will have to say, with some people, no. It's like, oh, I just don't want to get into it. And that's just keeping it 100. I mean, that's just keeping it 100. Like, sometimes you just be tired. You don't want to go there. Something else you had touched on, it was one of the points too from the sermon, was having a friendship that's vision driven, and there, like I told y'all guys earlier, like I know lots of people that I love to be friends with. I've always been that person that's like, the more the merrier, you know what I'm saying? Like, I've never had a problem making friends. I'm not shy in that regard. And so, but I can bite off too much than I can chew, because you really cannot build with 20 people. You can build with maybe 2 people, like truly build, where you know about them and they know about you. They know about what you're struggling with. They know about your goals. You know what I'm saying? And really, to be honest with you, anything more than that probably would be exhausting to you, to know all those people's problems and all those people's, So it's like practically you wouldn't be able to do it even if you wanted to. And that's where I'm at. Like, I want to, but I really can't. I physically and mentally can't. And so anyways, but I think about the people who, like, I think God reveals to me like who those people are in my life. Those are the people who like spur me on. This kind of ties into another point that he has, was like, encouragement has to be a staple. Like, those people who it's like, y'all just kind of link up. And like, Melvin, have you ever had those people that when you meet them, like, you don't even have to know them for long, but it's like y'all linked? I think the Davises are like that for us. Norman and Jolanda are like, I feel like we're like knit to them, even though we didn't even know them that long.
Yeah, you know what? That I think there's a couple of couples like that for me. I think the Davises for sure, man. Like
Yeah.
I get, I miss the days that we were all in the same group.
Mm.
I really, Norman is like just an easy dude to talk to, and both of them are very humble, just in the way that they to be where they're at. You would think that they would have a lot more. They would be a lot more difficult to talk to. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because, and by that I just mean like, man, they got great kids, and I mean, it's great, and they
They're an
still come.
awesome
Yeah,
couple.
they just
They
come off
awesome.
so gentle
Real.
and without being soft though.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't just go through naming names, but it's you've heard us say the Jackson's name on here about 50,000 times,
Yeah.
but like it's just, and there's others, man, just people who I can just, I don't know, man, just I feel really linked to.
Yeah, like I feel like,
Brian and Brandy.
yeah, Brian and Brandy. Like, I mean, Brian and Brandy Davis, hey y'all. Like I just was like, I can think of people, and I'm like, I feel that way, or as much as I can understand it, how Jonathan felt with David. Like, you met them, and then now you feel like y'all are connected and bonded. You know what I'm saying? And it's almost like there's really nothing that you can do that will like damage my loyalty to you. Like,
Right.
there's really nothing, like, I can't. I was thinking about that with Valeria and Chavis. Like, there's nothing that they can do that would like make me not be loyal to them. Like, I
Yeah,
will
like
always
I'm riding
have,
to the wheels fall
yeah,
off.
I will always have a foundational respect. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's nothing that can happen. And so yeah, like, yeah,
Well, I think this was a good one.
yeah.
We may have to do a part two on this. But yeah, if there's anything we want to leave you guys with, is just make sure you really evaluate where your relationships are. You know what I mean? And find out, like, what are they based off of. And if you feel like you don't have any friendships, you don't have any deep relationships, 100% start with yourself. You know what I mean? Start with figuring out what it is, what I'm going to be doing. And if you're like me, where you have a lot of, like for me, I really feel like I just got to start evaluating, like, where in my heart, is it a trust thing? Because I definitely have had like deep relationships and, within the kingdom that, really left me wounded. Like, and I'll talk about this more later, but yeah, we all got those stories, and some of that stuff we don't do it consciously, but we have to be aggressive in weeding it out, because really what it results in is missed opportunities of really the only thing that matters in life, and that's people. You know what I mean? Having deep, godly relationships. Otherwise, if it was just us and God, He just put us out on an island and we just be us and God. It's a reason why He has us worship together. He has us this idea of corporal, communal worship. It's because at the end of the day, that's all you got. That's all you have is one another. When all the chips are down and everything is gone, and you don't want to be that person that no one knows you. No one, when you're hurting, you got to spend 2 hours explaining who you are before anyone could ever even understand your pain. You want people to be in your life, and vice versa. Your life isn't rich if you're not pouring into somebody else, man. If you're not having conversations at least once a month where you feel like you're having an impact on somebody's life, then you're not really living. Like, you're just not. And I can say that with all sincerity, man. Like, if you're not impacting people, then you're just really living a bland, self-centered life. But all those things take going out and really having a lot of self-examination, and really the challenge they gave, like going and asking somebody else, like go ask someone else what type of friend you are. Go ask your best friend, what type of friend am I? you know, and find out. Don't get mad if they say,
Yeah, be ready for the answer.
yeah.
Yeah, I've been trying to think about, I'm trying to get the courage up to ask that question. But yeah, so anywho, well, I guess that'll be about it. Like I said, y'all, we're gonna get consistent. Y'all bear with us. You know, we're really, like we said, the spirit has been really prompting us to really lean into our family. And my oldest daughter, will be starting kindergarten in about a week and a half. Actually, in about a week. And so, be patient with us. We're trying to put out consistent content. We thank all of you all who listen, and we thank you guys who have reached out to us personally. I am so encouraged that somebody even listening. Period. This is a labor of love. And it's just something that we're learning as we go. And so we thank you guys for tuning in. And like I said, we're going to get consistent. Hopefully it'll be sooner than later. I would say we'll see y'all next week. I'm going to go ahead and speak that into existence. We're going to see you next week. We're going to start putting our right foot forward, our best foot forward, and live our best life like Brother Duval told us to. And anything else before I sign us off completely?
Nah, man. I think I'm good.
All right. Well, you have Kim here and my trusty wingman, Melvin. And you were listening to the SoulSense podcast. We will catch you next week. Thank you. Bye.